mention what he was presented in the back in the last days?
Oh.
Working, but you can go.
Yeah, I want to just talk to him.
That's the one you emailed us.
I know, but I wanted to go back to the other two.
Test. Once again, I want to thank you for your presence, from you and for those who watch us online on YouTube. I want to say big thank that your presence is very welcome here. And we are at the 6th seminar, health seminar, which was presented by Phil Brewer. And tonight, this afternoon, we will talk about nutrition. And on the same time, I want to thank you for all your presence during those five presence of every night at 7:30. And we learn about principles for optimal health, including COVID-19. We learn about good news. We had a good news actually about the cancer, which and how we can prevent it. Heart disease, cerebrovascular disease as well. And last night we had very good information about pandemic and the stress. It was very helpful. I hope that you all was blessed by all that information, which help us to keep our body strong and healthy, to not only enjoy on this earth and every single day of our life, but also we can bless others with this information. Thank you again for all of your presence here. And tonight, this afternoon, we will talk about nutrition, like I said. And I like to open with a word of prayer. Let's bow our head. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you again for your presence. We thank you for all that good information that you have for us this afternoon. And I ask your presence, your Holy Spirit, to be present here, to be present in our homes and our lives, to be changed and to give your glory. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Thank you very much for your attendance. One of the promises I made myself is that I would never lecture in the afternoon after lunch. And the reason for that is because the natural thing is to go to sleep, right? I mean, it's very difficult to lecture to a group of people that are sleeping, but do your best. I'll do my best. We'll try and keep people active. You'll see what I have on the screen right now. This is Silver Hills Guest House. We're serving you food. And what we want to do, we have a principle at Silver Hills that I want you to understand that is, I think, very important. It's a direct quote: if the food eaten is not relished, the body will not be so well nourished. So the principle, the idea is we don't eat nutrients, we eat food. It's very important to realize that. We have come to a time when people are, when you ask them, what are you eating? Well, I'm eating a shake. I'm eating something that I blended up. I'm eating this, I'm eating that. If the food eaten is not relished, when you think of relished, what do you think about? You look forward to it, you enjoy it, right? If the food eaten is not relished, the body will not be so well nourished. And so what you're after is really taking food and making it so that you enjoy it. I have to tell you a story. This is a story. We had a fellow that knew that we were, enjoying eating grapes, and he had a grape orchard in Kelowna. And he said, when I get finished picking my grapes, he had a large grape orchard. He said, when I get finished picking my grapes, I want to invite your family to come and eat the grapes. And so he phoned me up. He says, I'm finished picking, come down and pick. So we went down with our children, and we had the lunch already packed, and we arrived there right at lunchtime. And we said, well, instead of eating our lunch, just go and just pick some grapes to see what they're like, just to get an idea. Well, this was a huge grape orchard. They had green grapes, they had purple grapes, they had black grapes, they had big grapes, they had little grapes. They had bunches of grapes that were this big. All of them were dead ripe. When he finished, they were already done. And if you touched them, they would fall off. And so I would have one child over here. They're over here, Dad. They're just great. I go over there, and then another one over there, really great over here. And I'm going back and forth for half an hour. We're eating grapes off the vine, just eating them right off the grind. And then we sat down and we laughed and laughed and laughed, and we were in the hot sun, and it was probably all the sugar in the, I don't know. But we all said the same thing. We never ate anything that tasted better. We had grape juice, we'd had grape jelly, we'd had all kinds of things that we had grape Jello, we'd had all kinds of things. Nothing tasted like grapes right off the vine. If the food eaten is not relished, the way God designed food was it to be enjoyed. It's not don't get the idea that it has to be some kind of a slavery that that you have to eat healthfully. No, It can be absolutely fabulous, and that's what we really try to do there at Silver Hills. Is this supposed to advance now? No. It's not moving forward. No. It is now. There you go. Touch it again, please. Yes, please. Yeah. There you go. You can see the type of food that we're serving. Okay, go ahead. And there it is there again. Okay, there it is there again. Nope. All right. So we're going to talk to you about two things: what we eat and how we eat it. Okay, because they're two important parts of nutrition. Not just what you eat, but how you eat it. Okay, and so we're going to explain that to you here. The first thing I want you to look at is, where does your food come from? Where do you get your food? Okay, grocery store, right? And so you go through the grocery store, you pick out the food you want, and you push your buggy up to the counter to pay for it. And what's at the counter? What do they have at the counter when you're going to pay for your food? What is there? What's that? Well, chocolate bars, yeah. There's all kinds of what we call impulse buys. That pays the wages for the lady that's running your material through. It's an impulse buy, but there's something else there. There's magazines. And the magazines will tell you, if you want to lose weight, this is what you do, right? And they always summarize the food into three categories. What are they? Carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. They got three categories called carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Why? Carbohydrates, let's do it. Carbs, protein, and fat. Why do they just pick on those three? You know why? Well, you have two words. One's macro, and the other is micro. What's the difference? What does macro mean? Big, good. And micro means small, right? That's simple. Microscope, things that are small. Macro, big. You have three macronutrients: carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. That's it. We have all kinds of micronutrients. When I was a kid, we had vitamins and minerals. I thought I knew it all. Then somebody came up with antioxidants, and all of a sudden, oh boy, now we had a whole new array of things. And then somebody came up with phytochemicals, endols and flavones and lectins and all these type of things. And you were like, oh, there's so much more to learn, but you only have three macronutrients. We're eating our macronutrients incorrectly, and then we're spending expensive dollars trying to make up for it with buying expensive micronutrients. All right, so that's the problem. So when we get our food, where do we get it? We get it from the store. Where does it actually come from, though? What does it take to make food? If we really got serious, and sometimes during the pandemic we started hearing food shortages, we started thinking, well, how big is my backyard? How much would I have to dig up? How many potatoes could I grow? You know, like, what do you have to do to make food? What does it take to make food? Sunshine, good. It's on the board up there. Air, water. What's that? Okay, you have to have soil, air, water, and sunshine. If you have just them, what do you have? If I just had a bucket with soil in it, I put water with it, and I mixed the air with it and sunlight, what would I have? Mud, exactly, a mud pie. Would you have food? Would you, if I took mud, mixed earth with water, made mud, put it out in the sunlight and air, would I have food? Could I eat that and live? No, of course not. Every starving generation, every starving group of people, they open their stomachs, they got mud. Last thing we do when we haven't got anything to eat is we eat dirt, and you die. What do you have to have? What do you have to have? Advance. Great. You have to have what? Plants. That's where food comes from. All food comes from the green leaf of a plant, right? The green leaf, what's it called? Grade 5 science. What's it called? Sunlight hits the green leaf and hits the chlorophyll and produces, what is it called? What's the word? Photosynthesis. That's where all the proteins, carbohydrates, and fats are made on this planet, are made in the green leaf of a plant. So, you know, can a bird do that? Can a fish do that? I've had people tell me if you ate just plants, you'd be missing something. Oh, food comes from plants. The animals don't make something out of it. They don't make protein. They eat protein, right? I mean, animals eat the protein, and then we eat the protein from the animals, but they got it from the plant. All food comes. If we actually get to Mars, we're going to have to take with us greenhouses, and we're going to have to produce plant. Are you advancing it, or is it doing it by itself?
Doing it by itself.
Oh, that's interesting. Oh, there we go. Click on it one more time, maybe up there. Keep going. Go. You're going backwards. I don't know why. Okay, just stop right there. Stop. Good. Thank you. Okay. So if we take a look at what we're eating in our Western society, I want you to look at this slide. You can see it. We're eating 12% of our calories from vegetables, legumes, and nuts, 19% from grain, 17% from sugar, 70% from free fats and oils, 15% from dairy products, and 20% from meat, poultry, and fish. When you look at that slide, how much of it's coming directly from plants? Well, vegetables, legumes, nuts, you know that's plants. You could see the plant, right? What do you think about grain? If I sent you to town to buy grain, what could you buy? Tell me the different ways you could buy grain. Help me. I could buy bread. Okay, what else could you buy? Cereal, good. What else? Corn. Just buy the grain the way it is. What else? Ravioli, macaroni, spaghetti, pizza dough, cake mix, Tim Hortons. We got grain all over the place. 90% of the grain sold in Canada is refined. All right? What does that mean, refined? We've taken something away from it. We've taken the bran. First of all, we take the bran away. Right underneath the bran, there's an antioxidant. And we take away the bran, we take away that antioxidant. And so a person comes along and says to me, come to our place. We're having a party. What's going on? Well, there's a guy he's selling this bottle that has more antioxidants than anything you've ever seen in your life. If you buy this bottle, you can get it for $30 tonight. If you buy 4 bottles, you can get it for $25. If you buy 10 bottles, you're a dealer, and you can be like me, and you can have people come over. Have you ever heard of this stuff? We've all heard of it. Why? Because we're taking the antioxidants out of the grain. We're refining it. Sugar. How many teaspoons of sugar do we eat per man, woman, and child in Canada per day? How many teaspoons per day? Somebody give me a guess. Just 12, okay? I've got 12 here. Does anybody give me 15? Somebody said 24. Have I got 30? Anybody say 30? Have I got 35? I've got 42. 42 is what we're eating. 42 teaspoons of sugar for every man, woman, and child in Canada today. Now I have people tell me, well, I don't eat sugar. Do you eat all bran? All bran's 21% sugar. Do you eat ketchup? 30% sugar. I mean, if you're buying it, if it's refined, it's got sugar in it. I mean, if it's prepared, it's got sugar in it. I had the fellow that produces granola right here in Vancouver. I went to his factory, and he told me, I said, what's that smell? I remember this from childhood. He told me that smell is sugar, brown sugar. He says, don't let anybody fool you. The more sugar I put in my granola, the more granola I sell. So, like I say, I used to tell people, you have to prepare it yourself if you want to make sure there isn't that much sugar in it, because otherwise you really don't know it. Most of the food that you sell has got some sugar in it. We eat 42 teaspoons. How many feet of sugar cane does that equal? Any idea? That's 90 feet of sugar cane it takes to make 42 teaspoons of sugar. We said that food comes from plants. But I took 90 feet of a plant and boiled it, and then spun it in a centrifuge, and out came the crystalline carbohydrate. No protein, no carbohydrates. No protein, no vitamins, no minerals, no antioxidants, no phytochemicals, just crystalline carbohydrate. 42 teaspoons a day. My body doesn't know what to do with it. It's like a chemical to the body. See what's going on? Okay, the next one is free fats and oils. What's free fat? How many have you got? Have you have a Costco here? Do you guys got Costco? Do they have samples? Is that free fat? Listen, Dr. Budwig said fat is what we take out of. Free fat is the peanut oil comes out of the peanut, the corn oil comes out of the corn, the soya oil comes out of the soybean. See, we take it out, and when we take it out, we leave behind the vitamins, the minerals, the antioxidants, the phytochemicals, the fiber. We leave that behind, and all we have is the fat, the free fat. You see what I'm saying? And we are consuming 17% of our calories from that. If we add up those three, 19, 17, and 17, what do we get? 17 and 17 is 34, and 20 would be 54, so that's 53. 53% of the calories in our Western diet come to us from foods that have had the nutrients taken out of them. Are you with me? 54% of the calories, we've taken the nutrients out of it. That's the biggest catastrophe in our diet, right there. That's the beginning. Some people think, I've had people come up to me and say to me, Phil, we don't eat any more red meat. And I'm supposed to get really excited. You don't eat any more red meat. I'm never really worried about what people don't eat. What do you eat? Well, we eat Twinkies and Ding Dongs and Dilly Bars and Jujubes and Almond Roca. And what do cows eat? Grass, right? They eat plants, right? Cows eat plants. I'm not going to eat a cow. I'm going to eat Twinkies. If you feed a cow Twinkies, what happens to him? He twinks out. He's done. Cows eat plants. I'm not going to eat something that eats plants. I'm going to eat something that has all the goodness taken out of it. Where food comes from plants. So if you want to have health, you've got to eat the plants. You either eat an animal that eats plants or you eat the plants yourself. You're going to have to eat the plants, right? And if you take it and refine it, that's the biggest disaster. Well, what do you think about the dairy products, egg, meat, poultry, and fish? What do you think about those? It's a fascinating thing because when I have a health lecture, I have 20 guests at the guest house sitting in a class, and there isn't one of them that says, well, I like beef. They're sitting in a vegetarian retreat. Nobody pipes up and says, I want my beef. They're pretty polite. But what do you think about dairy products, eggs, meat, poultry, and fish? What do you think about those things? What does it mean? Well, okay, so I'm driving on my way over to West Bank, and I got a number of people at a cooking school. I think there was 50 ladies at this cooking school, and they asked me to do a lecture, and I'm back driving on the back roads. The only thing you can get is CBC, and in that day, it was a few years back, they had a thing called bird flu over in Germany. They had this thing called bird flu, and what had happened was a cat caught a bird with bird flu, ate it, and died. What do you think the Germans did? They quit eating chicken. A chicken is a bird. A cat is a mammal. It doesn't take much science to realize that if a mammal eats a bird that's got bird flu and dies, that you eating a chicken could die. And so they quit eating chicken. And I saw great big transport loads, double tandem axle dump truck dumping frozen chicken in the landfills in Germany. Why? You know why they're doing that? Because chickens don't stop growing. If producers are producing them, then you don't buy those frozen ones. They got to get rid of them because they got more coming. It's not easy you just don't say, okay, well, I guess we'll quit producing chicken. The chicken is coming. It just keeps coming. They had to start dumping it. Well, you know what happened. One German fellow saw a friend of his come out of Kentucky Fried Chicken, and he seemed to be alive, and another one saw another one, and then pretty soon they said, well, we'll go back to eating chicken, but we'll be really careful, right? We'll just keep our eyes on this bird flu thing, and so they went back to eating. In Canada, we had a big scare not that long ago, where they found out that some farmers were taking the cleanings from fish plants, fish guts, and feeding it to their cows. Did you hear about that? To up their protein, right? You heard about that. And they said, no, don't do that. Why wouldn't you feed fish to cows? Why wouldn't you feed fish to cows? Any idea? Have you ever seen a fish? We have fish that spawn in a stream out in front of our farm there, and there's cows in that pasture. You seen hey Betsy, there's fish over here. You ever seen cows eat fish? Cows don't eat fish. Why don't cows eat fish? You got any idea? Why wouldn't a cow eat fish? Well, can you imagine if you ate a fish, if you were a cow, if you ever watched what they do after they eat, what do? They burp it back up, right? And they chew it again. You imagine the third time they burped it up, this fish would start to stink. It would be horrible. They'd get mad, right? They can't do that. Cows don't eat fish. And so Canadians said, just don't feed them. Well, the fact is we have one of our health guests that came and told us out in the prairies, they have a sign on Highway 2. This is put up by the farmers, and they got a chicken like this. And it says, the caption underneath says, if the mad cow doesn't get you, I will. So even they are kind of joking about it, like they're saying it, Now, I've had people tell me, now listen, Phil, my Aunt Minnie, she eats 3 strips of bacon and 2 eggs. Has done it her whole life. She's in her 90s. What are you going to say about that? I mean, that proof is there, right? 90 years old, 3 shifts of bacon, 2 eggs a day, every day. Fact is, the last few years she's been, taking a tumbler of rum. Later on in the day, it helps her sleep, so she just has a tumbler of rum and takes care of the aches and pains, and she sleeps better. And what would you say to that person? I mean, So I said to them, well, listen, I talked to your Aunt Minnie. I went before she had her tumbler of rum and talked to her, And this is what she told me. The chicken today is nothing like when I was a little girl. Haven't you heard that from Aunt Minnie? Never. The chicken today, the dairy products are not like when we used to milk the cows ourselves. The chicken egg, when we used to be young, the chicken egg, we used to take it, we used to crack it on the side of the casserole dish. We'd had to hit it 3 times before we could open it. Now we have to be careful it doesn't collapse on the way to the dish. The eggs, the dairy, the meat is not like when I was a little girl. If Aunt Minnie's 90, she spent her childhood eating out of a family garden, guaranteed. We didn't have food stores back in those days. We didn't have Safeway. We didn't have those stores. They ate out of a family garden. If she's 90, she ate out of a family garden. She walked to school both ways uphill, 5 miles. You remember? She told you that. She walked to school. She went through the dirty 30s when she had years when they only had 1 pound of butter a month and 2 eggs a week. Totally different. The products that we have today are nothing like when Aunt Minnie was a little girl, right? It's a totally different thing. All right, then I have somebody who comes to me, one of our guests, after they've been there a little while, talking about animal products, and they bring me the Bible, and they put it in front of me, and they say, now look at Jesus multiplied fish. So fish is okay. What are you going to say to him? It says right in there, he multiplied fish, right? That's biblical. Pastor, help me out. Well, here's what let me tell you. So I'm lecturing in New York City, and I had a paper that I picked up in New York's Times. This was a weekend edition. I don't even know if they still produce it, but they had a weekend edition. It said right on the front page, if you're pregnant, do not eat fish caught on the eastern seaboard. It may harm your pregnancy. You see, if we could get fish out of the Sea of Galilee 2,000 years ago, we would multiply it ourselves and make sure everybody had some. It would be absolutely fabulous to eat. But today, we have polluted this entire planet. And when I say that, I mean we've done a fabulous job of polluting this entire planet. And so we can no longer use the argument, well, Jesus multiplied it, because today, it's not a safe product. It's not the product it was when he was multiplying it. Next slide, please. So if we take our grain and we refine it, remember I told you what happens? We take out the nutrients. This is what happens. 86% of the B1, 70% of the B2, 86% of the niacin, 84% of the iron, 60% of the B6, 70% of the folic acid, 54% of the pantothenic acid, 90% of the biotin, 50% of the calcium, 78% of the phosphorus, 75% of the copper, 72% of the manganese, and 71% of the manganese. Magnesium is lost in the refining process. Next slide. Dr. Dennis Burkett. We were very fortunate when we were running the SHIP program in Kelowna. We invited this doctor to come from England, and they call him the fiber man. Dr. Burkett worked in a part of Africa where there was 2 tribes. One tribe of the Africans lived up on the side of a mountain, and the others lived down in the valley. And what he discovered is that there was, on the fellows up on the top of the mountain, they never got a lymphoma. The ones along the river got lymphoma. And he wondered, well, why was it? Why would the people up on the hillside not get lymphoma and the one down by the river got lymphoma? And the difference between the two was the one up on the hillside, the weather was cooler and they didn't have malaria. They didn't get the malaria mosquito. The ones along the river got the malaria mosquito. And the malaria mosquito, when they got bit by the malaria mosquito, it injured their immune system, and then they got this lymphoma, and the lymphoma was in their lymph glands in their neck so they could see it. So he asked himself the question. He said, well, I wonder how many diseases there are that are regional, that are actually in just a certain region. And guess what he discovered? He discovered that if you lived in Japan, you had a heart disease number that was very, very low. If you moved it to Los Angeles, your heart disease by the 2nd generation was equal to the people that were in North America. So the 2nd generation Japanese immigrants had the same incidence of heart disease as the people who lived here. So he said it really was there is something in LA there wasn't in Japan. What do you think it was? Lifestyle. There was McDonald's. there was the fast food industry, and the people, when they moved from Japan, they started eating like the North Americans, and they got the same disease. So he asked this question. He said, well, in Africa, in the rural hospitals in Africa, they have no diverticulitis, they have no colitis, and they have no appendicitis. If you go to the hospitals in Africa, and you go through the medical records, you do not see an appendectomy unless the person knows how to speak English. So why would learning English make you susceptible to having appendicitis? Any idea? What would be the correlation between having appendicitis and learning English? What would be the two? Well, yeah, exactly. You learned how to live the Western lifestyle, and you started eating the refined foods, the foods where we've taken out the fiber. And so Dr. Dennis Burkett did a study, and he said, I wonder what, you could touch this slide again, I think it'll be on there. Yeah, here we go. I wonder what would happen if I gave to a fellow in Africa colored pellets, and I wanted to see how long it took to go through his digestive tract. Guess how long it took? From the time he gave him the colored pellets till the time it went through his digestive tract was 30 hours. Then he did it in England and North America. He gave it to English people and North American people. What do you think he called it transit time. How much longer did it take to go through their digestive tract? In England and North America, it took 72 hours, and look at the next one, up to 2 weeks in the elderly. So the transit time, the length of time from the time the person ate the colored pellets till it went right through their entire digestive tract and went out in the stool, in North America was 72 hours, and in the elderly up to 2 weeks. And he said as that transit time gets longer and longer, diverticulitis, colitis, appendicitis, colon cancer gets more common. Are you with me? So what we're doing is when we're refining the food, we're actually making it so that we're affecting the bowel. Next slide, please. See, here's constipation. 29% of the people are affected by constipation. And one of the ways you determine it is infrequent bowel movements, 3 or less per week. Straining at stool, sensation of incomplete evacuation, constipation. Next slide, please. Treatment, what would you do for it? Well, first of all, drink more water. What is the job of the bowel? What's it trying to do? The large bowel I'm talking about, what's its main function? To absorb water. Main thing is to absorb water. If you're not drinking enough water, it removes so much water out of the matter that's there, it makes constipation. Drink more water. Remember I told you this morning, drink more water. Exercise and eat food containing fiber. Next slide, please. So where do we get it? Touch it again, please. Here we go. Look at there. In our country, we have huckleberries. How many of you here have ever gone huckleberrying? Anybody here gone huckleberrying? Ah, here we have one fellow. That was on the island, I bet you. That's where you did it. No? Up north. Okay. Yeah, well, we have them up near our place. When you go to the huckleberry patch, what do you think you find around the patch? Bear droppings. Bears have been in there and they eat it and they just keep dropping all over the place. It works great. Blueberries is high in fiber. Huckleberries are high in fiber. Some people think you have to stop at the health food store and you have to get yourself some Metamucil or you have to get some high fiber. Eat your fiber. Eat it. Blueberries, Brussels sprouts, oat flakes, pumpkin, cooked carrot, brown rice, Swiss chard, lettuce, cucumber, applesauce, all are high in fiber. Next slide, touch it one more time. Here's where there is no fiber. Ground beef, sirloin steak, lamb chops, pork chops, chicken, ocean perch, salmon, cheddar cheese, milk, and eggs have no fiber. Constipating foods. Next slide, please. So dietary fiber slows the stomach emptying time, which means that your blood sugar doesn't take off so quickly. So for the diabetic, one of the first things you want to do is get them onto a whole foods diet because they're going to slow their stomach emptying time, which stops that blood sugar from rising so quickly after they eat. It keeps a lower curve and improves insulin sensitivity. 50 grams of fiber are more effective than 24. 24 would be what the Canadian nutritionist would be advising, at least 24 grams of fiber. But if you even went higher than that, it would even work better. Next slide. It's a worldwide problem. You can see that in 1980, 153 million. Now there's 347 million diabetics. And in the Marshall Islands, that's another thing. We'll go ahead. Next slide, please. And you can see, oh, you went to, okay, leading cause of death in Canada, 2.2 million Canadians have it. We have 4 diseases in Canada that absorb 80% of our healthcare dollars. You know what they are? There's 4 diseases: cancer, heart disease, COPD, and diabetes. Those 4 diseases absorb 80% of our North American dollar in the healthcare system. 4 diseases: cancer, heart disease, diabetes, and COPD, or lung problems. They absorb 80%, and they all have a lifestyle component, all right? They're all involved in lifestyle. Next slide, please. Here's the thing that's interesting about diabetes. We've had many people come to the guest house with diabetes. They'll walk over to the table, and we'll have bananas on the table. We'll have oranges, apples. We'll have cherries. We'll have all kinds of fruit, and they'll say, I can't eat fruit. It's too much sugar. So I want to talk to you about sugar and diabetes. It was a fellow, I had a doctor that came here and described this to me, and then this slide will point it out to you. But let me show you, this is the description this doctor gave to me. So here we have the cell, and the cell has on its surface receptor sites for allowing sugar to come in, right? To come into the cell. And those doorways or receptor sites cannot allow the sugar to come in without insulin. So insulin opens that door to allow the sugar to go in, all right? Now, here's the problem. If you have a high fat diet, what happens is the cells recognize that there's a lot of energy in your blood, and they will start to shut down these receptor sites. Okay? If you have a high-fat diet. Why would high fat do that? Well, if you take a teaspoon of fat and a teaspoon of sugar, there's twice as many calories in a teaspoon of fat as there is in a teaspoon of sugar. There's way more energy, twice as much energy in a teaspoon of fat than there is in a teaspoon of sugar. And so if you have that much fat in your bloodstream, the cell is saying, I don't need to have all these receptor sites, and it begins to shut down those receptor sites. What do we do if the person has diabetes? We increase their what? Insulin. Insulin will not make new receptor sites. There's only 2 things that will make more receptor sites. You know what they are? The 2 things that will make your body produce more receptor sites is exercise and lower the fat. I have diabetic after diabetic come to me that are worried about sugar constantly. And I tell to them, listen, there's twice as many calories in a teaspoon of fat than there is in a teaspoon of sugar. I had a lady that came, one of the first ladies that came to the guest house. She was overweight, and she had really bad diabetes. She ate steak every day. When she got off her steak, her diabetes came under control. You see what I'm saying? Look at here. Dr. James Anderson, he took lean, healthy young men, and he was able to produce mild diabetes with a 65% fat diet in 2 weeks. Mild diabetes. After 11 weeks on a diet of 5% fat and 1 pound of sugar per day, if you can just, I don't know if you can move that slide up. Can you just touch, can it go up or not? I guess not. If you touch it, it'll change. Anyway, he could not produce diabetes when he gave them a 5% fat diet and 1 pound of sugar per day. Couldn't produce diabetes. But in 2 weeks' time, on a 65% fat diet, he could. The problem with diabetes in our country, is what I'm trying to say, is not so much the sugar, it's the amount of fat we're consuming. Are you with me? It's fat that's leading to that problem. Sugar is the thing that our body spills. That's the thing that shows up in the urine. That's the thing that, and so the person has a high sugar output. They're putting a lot of sugar out because their body's not absorbing it. But the cause of it has the fact that they're not exercising and they're eating a high-fat diet. If you put them on an exercise program and reduce their fat, their sugars will come right down. Okay? All right, next slide. Okay, there you go. He put these people up. Go ahead, we'll go to the next slide. Can't read that. All right, so we're back to this slide again. All right, next slide, please. And here's another problem with our animals. Touch that slide one more time. Today's meats, dairy products, and eggs are vastly different commodities of those even 30 years ago. Touch it one more time, please. Factory farm animals have as much as 30 times more saturated fat than yesterday's pasture-raised creatures. So we have a different product. Like I said, Aunt Minnie is complaining all the time that this product has changed. Next slide, please. The products from factory farms contain residues from pesticides, hormones, growth stimulants, insecticides, tranquilizers, radioactive isotopes, herbicides, antibiotics, appetite stimulants, and larvicides. And these are the things that were not in the animal diet when Aunt Minnie was a little girl. In 1940, none of these were in that meat product. Go ahead. So here's what we're going to talk about. The Western diet presently is 45% carbohydrate, 12 to 15% protein, and 40 to 45% fat. Take your sheet now. Those of you who can, take your sheet. I want you to turn it over to the next page, and we're going to go shopping. You're going to help me pick out a diet that will be useful. Now, first of all, what I want to show you is that sheet with all the numbers on it and the lines. It is a nutrition sheet, but it's also an eye exercise. Okay, so it's actually to train your eyes because it's too small to read. All right, so what we're after, the ideal diet is what? 70% carbohydrate, 10% protein, and 20% fat. Are you with me? That's the ideal diet. Let's go shopping. If you took hamburger, lean, second one on the list, how much protein is in it? How much is in it? Go ahead, holler it out. 50% protein. How much fat? 50%. How much carbohydrate? 0. What are we shooting for? On the ideal diet, 70% carbohydrate. All right, so there's nothing there. Let's go to sirloin choice broiled. See, that's about the 5th one on the list. How much protein? 25% protein. How much fat? 75. How much carbohydrate? My wife and I have traveled all over Canada from Winnipeg to Port Hardy doing cooking schools. And we'll have people invariably come to us after the cooking school, and they will come up to us quietly because they enjoyed the meal, but they'll ask us, where's the protein dish? If I was to serve them sirloin steak, would they have asked me that question? No, they wouldn't. How much protein is there in sirloin choice steak broiled? 25%. Look over at broccoli, just to cross over on vegetables. Just take a look at broccoli. How much protein is there in broccoli? How much is there in sirloin steak? 25. How much is there in broccoli? 28. Which has got more protein in it? Broccoli or sirloin steak? Broccoli. Are you with me? Where does the cow get its protein? It eats plants, right? You can eat the plants. You don't have to eat the cow. You're getting all the protein you want. The fact is, let me get his name. Okay, what he said was this: if you eat a variety of grains, fruits, and vegetables, it is impossible to not get enough protein. It is impossible. Eat a variety of grains, fruits, and vegetables. You can't get a diet that doesn't have enough. Let's go down to, salmon. What do we got? How much protein in salmon? 51. How much fat in salmon? 49. How much carbohydrate? 0. Okay, let's go to eggs poached. How much fat in an egg, poached egg? 34%. How much fat? 64% fat. How much carbohydrate? 2. Almost nothing. Let's go to cheddar cheese. How much protein? 27. How much fat? 71. How much carbohydrate? Almost nothing. Listen, what our grandfather and grandmother did is they were raised on a farm. If you went back to 1800s and you asked the people what was the staff of life, what would they have said? Bread was the staff of life. That's what they would have told you. Bread was the staff of life. How many have had a piece of squirrely bread? Ever had a piece of squirrely bread? Can you imagine eating 3/4 of a loaf of squirrely bread every day of your life? That's what our forefathers were doing, equivalent to that. 3/4 of a loaf, every one of them was eating every day. What else would you eat? Not much. You'd be full, right? That would fill you up. That was what when they said it was the staff of life, that's what it was. In the meantime, what we did, and I want you to realize this because sometimes we get this conspiracy theory in our minds. What we did is we moved off the farm. We moved into cities. How do you get calories from the farm to the table? It's not an easy process. One of the fastest ways to do it is to feed animals, chop them up, freeze them. You could store them in your freezer. You could take them out and fry them and cook them, boil them, bake them. And you took the calories from the farm to your table. It's not a stupid idea. It's a very intelligent idea. Human beings are intelligent. But they overlooked the fact that when you fed the carbohydrates to the animals, you ended up with two things. What? Protein and fat, no carbohydrates. Our Krebs cycle works on carbohydrates. That's how it works. And all of a sudden now we have to get the calories from the farm to your table and have as many people as we have living in these vast metropolises and cities. How do you get the calories? Well, they say they take the grain and they take all the goodness out of it. You know why they take all the goodness out of it? Because if you left the germ in it, it would turn rancid. They're only trying to get it to your table. It's not that they're trying to kill you. They're trying to get it to your table, because how do you get it so it has shelf life, so it doesn't destroy your life? The way to get the calories is you have to end up with either refining them to take out all the things that would make them go bad, or you're going to end up with having to keep on shipping them regularly very quickly to the table. You see what I'm saying? So this is what we did, is we took the food and we turned it into animal products, and now we're eating a tremendous amount of animal products, which are plugging our arteries, raising our blood sugar, blood pressure, all of those things. All right, let's take a look. We're looking again at 70, 10, 20. Let's look at grain. Just look at the right-hand column of grain. Look at the carbohydrates, 89, 82, 83, 72, 89, 79, 82, all the way down there high. Take a look at your fruits. Everything but avocados. Avocados high in fat. Everything else is in the 90s when you're looking at fruits for carbohydrates. If you're looking at vegetables, look at your vegetables. 69, 67, 80, all the way high. If you wanted to eat a diet that was largely 70% carbohydrate, 10% protein, 20% fat, you would eat largely what? Grains, fruits, and vegetables. You'd eat those largely. That would be where you'd be consuming most of your food from, those three food groups, right? Okay, next slide, please. This was the Canadian Food Guide. This was the Canadian Food Guide. It's changed again. This is the one I'm using right now. But the Canadian government, what's that?
Looks like the one from the 90s.
Yeah, well, it could be. This is what the 4 food group was in I think it was 1985. Thank you very much. But what the government was telling us to eat was largely what? Grain. What's the next one? Fruits and vegetables, small amount of dairy, and 3 ounces of meat, or peas, beans, and lentils more often. Right on that chart is what they said. If you were to eat like that, supposing you were to tell your friends you're going to eat like that, and you're going to invite them over for supper. It says largely grains, fruits, and vegetables. You invite your friends over. Come on over for supper. What are we having? Oatmeal. Right? Yeah, exactly. They'll say, well, we'll bring the meat. If you guys are broke, we'll bring the meat. Right? When people in the Western society, when they build their meal, they build it around what? The meat dish. If we're having turkey, we're having cranberries. If we're having steak, we're having mushrooms. If we have chicken, if we're having fish, we're going to have coleslaw. If we're having chicken, we're going to have whatever. We build the meal around the protein dish. That's where we're at. That thinking we have to change. Every time you eat fruits, grains, and vegetables, you're eating a protein dish. That's where it's coming from. You have to think differently. That's what we train we absolutely spoil them with all kinds of food so that they realize that the vegan diet is not a spare, untasty, ugly diet. It's very delicious. You can enjoy it. They can come for 3 weeks and never eat the same meal twice. Get a different meal every time. Next slide, please. All right. So we have these 3 macronutrients. Are you guys okay? Can we keep going? Yeah? Okay, here we go. So we have these 3 macronutrients. What are they? Protein, carbohydrates, and fat. How much of the carbohydrates does your body absorb? How much of the protein does your body absorb? How much of the how much of the fat does it absorb? Seems like all of it, right? It absorbs all the fat. All right, let's just touch that slide. Okay, look at. Your body does not absorb protein. It absorbs amino acids. It doesn't absorb carbohydrates. It absorbs monosaccharides. It does not absorb fats. It absorbs glycerol and fatty acids. How do you get it to that state? How do you get proteins to amino acids? How do you get carbohydrates to monosaccharides? How does that happen? Through a process called what? Digestion. All right, this is the next part. We talked about what to eat. Now we're going to talk about how to eat it. Oh, you turned it. Okay. That's all right. We got nothing now. You give us something. Go on. Okay, there we go. Perfect. Oh, all right. Oh, wait. All right. Oh, it's okay. You're just jumping ahead. All right, so here we go. How complex is your digestive tract? How complex is your digestive tract? Next slide, please. There we go. When people swallow their food, they say it goes into their stomach. But how complex is your digestive tract? I want you to think about that. So, where does digestion begin? Where does it begin? Okay. So, help me out. I want to ask you people, I'll ask a few of you what you like to eat. And please don't give me a fruit or a vegetable by itself. Give me something that's cooked, something that you'd like to eat, okay? Help me out, Pastor. Anything. What would you like to eat?
I like
baked potatoes. Okay, we got baked potatoes. Lasagna. We got baked potatoes and lasagna. Somebody else. What's that? Mac and cheese. Okay, we got lasagna, mac and cheese, baked potatoes. Help me out. Chili. Oh, boy, chili. Okay. Anybody else? Something else. What's that? Cupcakes. Thank you very much up there, Phil. We got cupcakes, all right? We got anything else? What's that? Rice and beans. Okay, so we got rice and beans, we got chili, we got baked potato, we got mac and cheese, we got cupcakes, we got, what was the other thing? Something else. Lasagna. There we go. We got it out there. We just got out. We went for a walk, went on the nature trails. We came home, and it's on the table. Before we even put a fork into it, what happens? What happens? Yeah, saliva. Why? Where does digestion begin? In the eyes, in your head. What you see, it's important. The way you present your food is very important. Don't just throw it on the table. Don't stand at the stove and eat out of the pot. Like, don't do that. Are you with me? People do that. They live alone. They sit there and they have to make themselves a sandwich. They're eating it back and forth while they're frying some potatoes or whatever it's like that. And they don't sit down and eat. Eating is digestion is a process. It starts off with being thankful for it, right? Sitting down and treating yourself to the meal. You have your knife and your fork and your plate sitting there. It used to be at one time that we ate as a family. We came home from work and we sat down and we ate as a family. Now that we've got so many activities going on, I'll meet you next Thursday for supper, right? And we really, really need to start thinking differently. We're letting our whole world blow up our life instead of controlling that life. The life needs to be under a different direction. We need to start thinking about sitting down and looking at our food. If the food eaten is not relished, the body will not be so well nourished. We're not getting nourishment on the fly. That's not how the body works. We got to start thinking differently about that, okay? The digestion is a process, and we look at this process, and it's got a number of parts to it. Next slide, please. So here's some of the digestive tract problems that we can have. In our mouth, we can get canker sores. We can get the hiatus hernia, stomach ulcers, gallstones, constipation, colitis, diverticulitis. Next slide. So here's what's happening. There's three things that take place in your mouth. You've prepared the food. You've made it look tasty. It's laying on the table. You like the look of it. It looks great. You're looking forward to it. What three things happen in your mouth? Well, that's nutrition, but I'm talking about what three things, what physiological things take place in your mouth. Start off. Saliva. Thank you very much. Saliva is one of the things. What else is there? What's that? Smell, taste. We'll say taste, okay? We'll give you the same idea, taste. So we got saliva, taste, and what else is there? Something else that we're doing mechanically. What do we do with it? Chewing. Chewing is part of what's taking place in the mouth. So we laid it out on the table. It's looking good, and it smells good, and we put it in our mouth, and we chew it. How important is saliva? It's very important. It starts breaking down the carbohydrates. The longer you chew it, the sweeter it gets. Okay, that's good. All right, so how does the food move in the digestive tract? Well, how does it move? You got 30 feet of intestine. How does it move? It's called peristalsis. So here's what happens. Oh, let's do that. I don't know. Do we have something white? Oh, yeah, maybe there's up here. Okay, so here we go. We're going to draw your digestive tract. Here it goes. This is your intestine, all right? So what happens is your stomach burps the food out into the intestine, and it moves through the intestine in those boluses. So this is called a bolus of food, and it's moving in this direction, all right? The muscles here relax, and the muscles here contract. And then that means it moves in that direction. What tells it to relax and contract? Any idea? Well, if you took and cut the nerve that goes from the brain to the digestive tract, it'll still do it. Fact is, they've done it to guinea pigs. They've cut, I don't hate to tell people these experiments, but they cut the nerve that went from the brain to the intestine. They put a bean in its mouth, and it would go right through the intestinal tract, and they did it for 7 hours, and every time they did it, it went through the intestinal tract. And they said it did it for 7 hours. And I thought, well, why only 7 hours? Why not 7.5 hours? Why not 8 hours? Why not 9 hours? You know why? Because that was a shift. The guy that was doing the thing was done in 7 hours. So we know that it will do it every time for 7 hours for sure. But why? Why does it move? What moves it then? If it's not the brain that's doing it, what's moving it? Well, it's the contents. The trigger is in the intestinal wall. As the contents touches the wall is set up to trigger to move things. See what I'm saying? So it actually, the trigger is the wall itself. It's built in such a way that when the fiber or the food, can you imagine Jell-O? You know, Philadelphia cream cheese? I know you're in there, but where are you? You know, like, there's no fiber, right? It's the touch of the wall that makes the peristalsis. I'll tell you what else. They injected saliva into the wall that creates peristalsis. Now that's interesting, isn't it now? So let's do another thought then. If I'm sitting at the table and I'm eating and I've got pink lemonade, take a bite, take a drink, take a bite, take a drink. I don't need any saliva, right? See why drinking with your meals counterproductive for your salivary. You see, you really need to do it. Fact is, if you're having a person that's having digestive problems, you know what the recommendation is? Take bread and put it back in the oven and twice bake it. Zwieback, they call it. Zwieback, the German calls it. It's twice baked. Get the person to eat twice baked bread, and their digestive tract may actually improve, may actually get better, because they're chewing it up and they're producing saliva, making it full of saliva, and the saliva is actually important for digestion. Does that make sense? Like what? Toast, yeah, like toast, yeah, toast, but this is even more. It's actually dried right out, so it's zwieback, all right? It's actually crunchy, right? So you can see saliva is very important, all right? What about chewing? How important is that? How important is chewing?
I think it's very important because it increases the surface area on which the saliva
Can work. Thank you very much. It increases the surface area, okay? That's very good. Let me give you this thought. Satisfaction of appetite depends more on the length of time you chew the food than the amount that arrives in the stomach. Let me give you that too again. Satiety, satisfaction of appetite depends more on the length of time you chew the food than on the amount that arrives in your stomach. You're going to a Thanksgiving dinner and you think, I'm going to eat until I'm full, and you put on a pair of stretch pants and you got a moving target, right? I mean, I can't get full. It's going to keep moving away. If you want satiety, satisfaction of appetite, chew your food. It depends more on the length of time you chew your food than on the amount that you arrive at. There's another thing. How many of you grow peas? Anybody here grow garden peas? Some of you must have grown peas in your garden. If you grow peas in your garden, you have to stake them. Otherwise, if they get on the ground, they get moldy. So you stake the peas up, and then you pick the peas. What color are peas? What color are the plants? I can't see them. I will go through and pick a whole row of peas, and my wife will come behind me and she'll say, you didn't pick any of them. And she'll go and pick a whole bunch more. If you're going to genetically engineer anything, make red peas on green beans. Then I can pick them, you know. But anyway, so you pick the peas, you shell the peas, you blanch the peas, you freeze the peas, you take them out in the wintertime, you thaw them out, you cook them with carrots, and if you don't chew them, what happens? They go right through whole. There they are in the toilet, whole peas. There's whole chunks of banana. There's whole pieces, half a piece of almond. You're not chewing your food. You can't, your stomach does not have any teeth. If you don't chew your food, you're just wasting it. It's just going right through you. Safeway loves you. Keep coming back. You're not chewing your food. Here, come on back. You have to get the nutrient out of the food, you got to chew it. Slow down. That's our problem. We're always doing I'm double tasking here today. I'm eating and I'm driving my car. I'm eating and I'm doing emails. I'm eating and I'm answering my phone. No, eating. You know, eating was thought to be so sacred at one time, right? Eating was thought to be so sacred that people would actually pray before they ate. You know, they'd actually stop and actually pray over their food. They were thankful for the food, and they'd pray for protection and the whole thing because food was sacred. Now it's just something you do to get it out of the way. I just got to get it done. I'm eating nutrients. What are you eating right now? I'm grazing. When people say they're grazing, go and look at cows. Cows don't eat all day. They eat, they stop, they lay down, and they burp it up, they chew it, they lay down. You know, they don't graze like we do. That's what we call graze. They don't do that. All right. Let's say, okay, chewing. Taste. How important is taste? Whoops, back, if you can go back. How important is taste? And very important? If the food eaten is not relished, what was it? You got to memorize this one. If the food eaten is not relished, the body will not be so well nourished. Healthy eating is not raw broccoli and raw cauliflower swished under the tap and eating looking over the back fence. That's not healthy eating. You might be able to do that for 2 days, but you won't do that for a lifetime. You'll reward yourself with almond roca if you do that. That's what you're going to do. You're going to go like, I can't take this. I've got to have something good to eat, and you're going to eat some junk. Are you with me? Right? That's what's going to happen. All right. Taste is very important. Now, let me tell you this about taste. In all natural food, there's a natural gag reflex. All right? So let's do a thought experiment. Let's say I'm going to give you a whole grain slice of bread, whole grain loaf of bread. I'm going to give you Donald Duck white bread. All right? I'm going to give you the topping of your choice. It can be avocado, it can be strawberry jam, it can be peanut butter and honey. You name what you want to put on it. Which one are you going to eat more slices of before you reach satiety? The whole grain bread or the white bread? White bread, you're going to just keep eating and eating and eating because there's something missing. You see what I'm saying? In all natural food, there's a natural gag reflex. All right? How about let's try dates. Medjool dates from Florida, from California. You know, you've had those nice, rich, sticky dates, right? We're going to pass around a box. I just brought up in California. Everybody can have a date. You eat 4 of them and you go like, man, they're rich. They're filling. I've had enough. 4 dates, I've had enough. Now I'm going to get you a box of Purdy's chocolates. And there's going to be no Silver Hills food police, no food police. You're encouraged to eat as many as you want. Nobody's watching. You can eat the whole box if you want. You know the kind that has the map in it. It is, you know, the toffees are the Hatch and the circles are the creams. You know the ones I'm talking about. Yeah, right. You can. Which one will you eat more of, the dates or the Purdy's chocolates before you reach satiety? The Purdy's chocolates, you can just eat and eat and eat and eat. You can eat if nobody's watching. You can eat the whole box.
Where's my second one?
There you go. You got it, right? So the more whole and natural you eat your food, the sooner you'll reach satiety. You with me? There's another thing. Now I'm going to talk to you about potlucks. I went to a potluck. You have no idea what kind of potlucks. You guys have a very tame potluck here. It's very delicious, very tasty. But I've been to a potlucks, and I have to invite you to one in Port Hardy. And in Port Hardy, there's a table that's the full length of the gymnasium. And every table is full. So it's 4 times as long as your table and wider, and those tables are full. And if you took a teaspoon off of every one of those plates, you would have to fill your plate at least 4 times. You just took a teaspoon. Unbelievable. Now let's do a thought process. So you walk up to the table, and you like the entree. You liked one of the entrees. It's a walnut roast. So you take a walnut roast. There's some mashed potatoes. You take the mashed potatoes, and you take the broccoli, and you go sit down and eat it. You're still hungry, so you go back and take the walnut roast, the mashed potatoes, and the broccoli, and you sit down and eat it. Well, I got a little corner left, and you took a little bit more walnut roast and broccoli and mashed potatoes, and now I've had enough. I've reached satiety. if I took a teaspoon of everything on that table, I would never reach satiety. And the reason is because I've never had enough of any one thing to have had enough. Are you with me? So the wider the variety that you have, the harder it is to reach satiety. So if you eat less variety at every meal, but lots of variety throughout the week, you reach satiety much easier. Are you with me? Does that make sense to you? So eat lots of variety in your diet, but not at one meal. Now, in saying that, I would never want to rule out potlucks, because that's where you have fun. That's where you talk to people, and we need that too. Potlucks are great, but just don't have a potluck every day at home. Are you with me? Stick to 3 varieties at your meal, and you'll reach satiety much easier. All right, let's take the next slide. So what about eating between meals? Touch the slide one more time. So there was a study that was done on university students. They gave them breakfast of cereal and cream, bread and butter, cooked fruit, and egg was eaten. And they took pictures of their stomach, and in 4 hours, their stomach was empty. Okay, so they get breakfast was at 8, by 12, stomach was empty. Next slide, please. So the next day, they gave them 2 hours after their breakfast, they gave them a snack. They gave them an ice cream cone. Look what happened to their stomach emptying time. They still had breakfast in their stomach at 8 hours. 2 hours after they had eaten, they gave them a nut butter sandwich. They had a residue of their breakfast at 9 hours. They gave them just a banana 2 hours after they ate, and they had residue from their breakfast at 8 hours. So you see what's going on here? So in other words, even a banana, a piece of fruit, people think, well, fruit is so, it's just you could graze on it any time. I want you to understand what the stomach is doing. The food goes into the stomach, and the stomach has a door at the top of it and at the bottom. Why? It's got a door at the top of the stomach and at the bottom of it. Why does the stomach have a door at top and bottom? Any idea? Exactly. Inside your stomach is hydrochloric acid. It's on the pH scale, it's as acid as you can get. Your blood is running about 7.4, which is a little bit alkaline. 7 would be exactly in the middle, but it's a little bit more alkaline. But your stomach acid is running at 1. Your stomach would actually digest itself if it wasn't lined with mucus lining, see? So it's so acid that you have a door at the top and a door at the bottom. Let me tell you about the door at the bottom. Our first child was born in Courtenay. And when my wife told me that she was pregnant, I had no idea what you would do as a father. I was raised as the youngest in our family. She was raised as the youngest in her family. I had never held a baby in my life. I had never folded a diaper. I've never fed a baby a bottle. I had no idea what a baby was. She's pregnant, but I don't know what that means. Like, I know what it means for her, but I don't know what it means for me. Like, what do I do? You know, what's my role? And then they told me we were going to have prenatal classes, and I was so excited because I thought, well, here I'm going to learn something about being a dad, right? They're going to tell me what it is. And they did. They told me to stand at her head and make sure she breathed and stay right out of the way while they were doing the delivery part. So I was standing here at the head, see? And the baby's born. I was so excited. I was living in Courtenay at the time, and I was actually framing the house for the priest right across from the hospital. I was framing his house. Me and another fellow were putting on the soffit at the time, and I told them when the baby's born, wave the sheet out the window, and I'll come running over, and I'll be there to see the delivery, right? And that's what happened. They waved the sheet, and I came running over with my nail bag, and I came over there, and there's the baby, and the baby is born, and it's a son. And the doctor did something, and then they handed the baby to me, and I took him in my arms. I want to look at my son eye to eye, you know, like this is first time seeing, right? And his head fell off. Just boom. What was wrong with his head? Well, you got to get his head, you know, like, because they don't have any neck muscles. I didn't know that. Nobody told me that, right? So I got his head. No, you don't get him by the head. Right? Well, they said get his head. Well, what do you mean? Say what you mean, right? At the time that baby was born, there was absolutely no incentive at that time to breastfeed the baby. When that son of ours was born, that they sent you home with a formula and a baby bottle, and that was it. There was no incentive to have the baby breastfed. So we took the baby home and fed him his bottle. It's so exciting. You know, we feed him his bottle, and then you're supposed to sit him up and just rub his back, right? And he's supposed to burp, right? Burp the air out. So you're going this, and all of a sudden, 10 feet. He burped and he hit the wall. He has projectile vomiting. One boy in 700 has this problem. One boy, not girls, one boy in 700 has this problem. It's called projectile vomiting. And what happens is the bottom of the stomach closes so vigorously, he rejects the entire feeding and puts it on the wall 10 feet away, just shoosh. Well, now I got a baby that's crying, and I got a wife that's crying. I got 2 crying babies. Two crying, and like, we can't take it back. There's no Costco. There's no, this isn't got a take-back policy. You got to keep this thing. I looked it up. I wasn't online back in those days. I looked it up, and guess what? Projectile vomiting only lasts 2 years. So you got 2 years of warming 1, 2, or 3 bottles to get one down, to stay down. You have to be very careful, right? Anyway, so that valve at the bottom of the stomach is very, very important. What it is doing is it's metering the contents of the stomach, releasing them only as fast as your pancreatic solution can neutralize the acid from the stomach. It's just allowing it out a bit at a time, and how much fat is in it so that it can put the bile in it to emulsify the fats. It's very careful the way it's going. When I get to this part of the lecture, I tell my elementary school students, the food that you eat and swallow is not inside your body. Okay, I'm going to say that to you again because these kids will actually wake up and look at me like they already know I'm half crazy. But I'll tell them the food that you eat and swallow is not inside your body, because the food that's inside your digestive tract is outside your body all the way through. Because the inside of your digestive tract is outside your body. The only food that's inside your body is the food that's absorbed through the wall of the digestive tract. And you want to have that wall, that digestive tract is actually protecting you from your food. Do you understand? So when you eat your food, it's loaded. I don't know how a microbiologist eats. Because if you took your salad and looked at it, you would see it's crawling with bacteria. Your food is just full of bacteria all over the place. Scrape your tongue, it's all covered in bacteria. You wouldn't even be able to eat. What the digestive tract is containing the food and digesting it and making it ready to be absorbed, but the food inside the digestive tract is not inside your body, it's inside the digestive tract. If you get what's called leaky gut syndrome, if you irritate your digestive tract enough, then proteins will leak out through the digestive wall into the bloodstream. That is the foundation for what we call autoimmune diseases. Are you with me? That's where your body begins to attack itself. You don't want that. You want your digestive tract intact. You want to look after it. When you start looking at what we're talking about here, residue from the breakfast, next slide please, we'll see if it's in there. Yeah, a 10-cent bag of peanuts was carried in a pocket for a few, eaten at irregular intervals. 11 hours later, a large amount of the breakfast was still in the stomach, 11 hours after the person had eaten breakfast. Are you with me? See what's going on here? We're nibbling and eating, and in between meals, we're we've come, see, when we were on the farm, there was a routine, because your cows have to be milked at a certain time. They have to be fed at a certain time. Everything was based on a routine. And as we moved away from that, we could have any kind of routine we wanted. In fact, we didn't even have to have a routine. We could eat whenever we had a 10-cent bag of peanuts in our pocket. We could just drive to work eating peanuts or all day long. We could eat anytime we want. But that's not how the digestive tract works. I tell people it's like a dryer. When you take your washing out of the washing machine and you throw it in the dryer, it goes through a cycle until it's all dry, right? Okay, so once in a while, I've had it happen. I've got the cycle almost finished, and I went in to put my next load in the washer, and I saw a sock laying in the bottom of the washer I missed. Now, I found out a neat thing about my dryer. If I open the door on the dryer and throw the sock in quick enough and shut the door quick enough, the dryer doesn't know I did it. So I could throw it in quick enough. I love that. Oh, I love that. I think it's so neat to beat that little machine there that it's watching me all the time. And I got the sock in there. But I want to ask you a question. If you got the load almost dry and you throw a wet sock in that dryer, what's going to happen? It's got to continue until that sock is dry. The stomach is trying to process your food. In your stomach you have hydrochloric acid and you have pepsin. And that pepsin is actually what's ripping the amines off the proteins. You're trying to break those proteins down into the amines so your body can take those amines and rebuild the proteins according to your genetic code. So it can make you out of it. That's really what's happening. And that's the process that's taking place in your stomach. So you're just about done the process and you throw in another sock, another banana or whatever, peanut or whatever. You throw something in the stomach when it's not finished its job and it's got to start over again. And you can see this person's digestive tract. Now I have people that come to me. I've got allergies. I've got all kinds of indigestion. I've got all kinds of food sensitivities. I've got all kinds of dyspepsia. I'm having a terrible time digesting my food. And they're waiting for me to come up with some kind of a miracle cured food instead of looking at the process itself and saying, wait a minute, I'm constipated. I'm eating foods that are constipating the bowel. I'm not drinking any water. I'm not eating on a regular routine. There's a psychologist here in Canada, and he said when he has people that come to him and they're having all kinds of depression, all kinds of emotional problems, and they want to have him as a counselor, you know what his first question is? What did you have for breakfast? What did you have for lunch? When did you have breakfast? When did you have lunch? He says, if you're fighting a blood sugar problem and I'm trying to help you with a psychological problem, it ain't going to work. You eat a good breakfast, you eat a good lunch, you eat a good supper. He says, now we can talk to you about this. It may be just a blood sugar problem. Are you with me? In other words, you may think, oh, my emotions, oh, this, oh, that. But you're not treating your body on the kind of regular routine that it needs. Are you with me? How important that is to have that regular routine. Then we can sit down and find out whether it really is a psychological problem. Maybe it's really just you're not looking after yourself. Are you with me? Okay? Next slide. Oh, again, breakfast was eaten at 8 a.m., dinner at noon, supper at 5:30, twice in the forenoon, twice in the afternoon. A chocolate candy was eaten at 9:30. More than half the breakfast was still in the stomach 13 and a half hours after the breakfast was eaten. Can you see the person with fermentations, indigestion, constipation? You can imagine all of the digestive problems that person's going to be having. All right, next slide. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you about a few things that we use at the guest house to help people with digestion. Gas in particular. Some people they get gaseous. Now let me explain something to you about the vegetarian diet and if you're changing to that diet. Now here I have a person that's eating the Western diet. So they're eating a lot of animal products in that diet. In their bowel they will have putrefaction bacteria. All right, so the body uses putrefaction bacteria to help digest the meat products. If they go to a vegan vegetarian diet, from a Western diet to a vegan diet, all of a sudden they got all kinds of gas. And you know what they'll say to you? Oh, it's the soybeans. Oh, it's the beans. I'm eating so many beans. No, it's not. It's the fiber. What actually happens is that if you have putrefaction bacteria in your digestive tract, and you eat foods full of fiber, your putrefaction bacteria will try and digest the fiber, and it will produce a voluminous amount of gas. We had a lovely lady sitting in one of my classes. This happens usually about the second week that they're there. And she was a dentist's wife, and she was sitting there, and she was passing gas pretty regularly through this class, you see. It was just rumbling out of her, and she was going, oh my, oh my. She was quite, her body was reacting in a way that she wasn't used to. She wasn't happy with the way it was happening. But the lady beside her was snickering and giggling and snickering and giggling. And finally, she got up and left the class. And I said to the lady, I said, you didn't have to leave the class. I mean, I knew you were finding it kind of funny because this lady was feeling so, embarrassed by the fact that her body was producing all this voluminous amount of gas. She said, I had to leave. I said, why did you have to leave? She says, because I wet my pants. So you could see at Silver Hills, she was laughing so hard she wet her pants. The problem is when you're changing your diet, your body will, the putrefaction bacteria will actually make more gas. Charcoal helps you with that, by the way. That will help to absorb the gas. If you're going to increase the charcoal intake, though, you need to make sure you increase your water intake because it can actually make you more constipated. So you want to make sure if you're going to use charcoal for gas that you take more water. If you change to the vegan diet or the plant-based diet and stay on it, then you won't, in a short period of time, you'll convert to a fermentation bacteria and the gas problem is gone. It's not going to be with you. The problem is when the person is in the middle. So they're a vegan until Thanksgiving, Turkey Day I call it, Thanksgiving Day, right? And then they're going to have turkey. And all of a sudden then they're going to go back to the putrefaction bacteria and the gas. And they're going to say, well, how come when I go back to the pure vegetarian diet, I get gas again? And they're going to say, why did I get gas again? Well, the reason why you got gas again is because you had putrefaction bacteria for 2 weeks that you had to work through the gas. So it's that kind of time period in between that where you're going to find that the person's going to have more gas. Charcoal can also be used for sore throat. Poison absorption, in fact, is if you went to the doctor and you had an overdose of something, one of the things they're going to give you is charcoal right away. Bee stings, intestinal gas, nausea, and diarrhea. Excellent for those things. Another thing that you can use it for is pain. And if you have pain somewhere on your body, something that's hurting, you can take charcoal. What we'll do is we'll take charcoal and we'll mix it with ground flax seeds. You take flaxseed and grind up in your blender and mix it equal portions with charcoal, and then mix it with water, and then put that on a paper towel, fold it over, and then put it on whatever area where you're going to have that pain. Put it on the pain, and then wrap it with a piece of plastic in place, tape it in place. You can actually, if you've got a person that's got ongoing pain, that keeps on getting pain, you can purchase a number of things. You can get them online, or you can purchase them in a number of stores that sell medical supplies. So these are patches that have charcoal already in them. See that right here? You've got a patch that you can have that already has charcoal in it, so you don't have to go through the process. If you're doing it all the time, you can buy them like that. You could buy also things that will, once you put the charcoal on there, you could tape it on in place. You can buy these kind of tape things that you can use, okay? You'll see in your sheet, I've given you a list of things that you can use charcoal for and how to make charcoal poultices, that type of thing, okay? The benefits of cabbage juice. If you turn over to the next page on the back of that charcoal thing, I was brought in contact with the thing about cabbage juice a number of times with people that came to our place. And cabbage juice is excellent for digestive tract problems. It's soothing. It's healing. It's very, very healing. You can read through this whole article about how to do it. What Dr. Thrash taught us to do is to take 3 ounces of charcoal before each meal. Okay, so you take 3 ounces of 3 ounces of cabbage juice before each meal. 3 ounces of cabbage juice. If a person has ulcers, if you have diverticulitis, if you have colitis, if you have any of these inflammations, to take that cabbage juice, 3 ounces, 50 minutes before each meal. Now, some people, cabbage juice is it's not like the tastiest thing in the world. So some people mix carrot juice with it. That'll work fine. You just take a little bit of carrot juice, mix it with your cabbage juice, and then you can drink it down easier. But it's very, very healing for stomach ulcers. Another thing that helps with stomach ulcers is cayenne. And you can look this up on the web. You would think, oh, if I got ulcers, the last thing I'd ever want to take is something hot. But if you look it up, and you'll find out that Helicobacter pylori, one of the things that creates ulcers in the stomach, cayenne really helps to counteract that, all right? So you can look that up as well. You can use cayenne capsules or in some way to take it down. It will help with Helicobacter pylori. It will actually kill it, destroy it. The problem with many times with the Helicobacter pylori, it's like a moving target. They'll give you an antibiotic for it. It may kill it. Sometimes it doesn't. It makes it worse. And then you've got it over and over and over. You get a rebound effect. And so try some of these other things. You can try cabbage juice, or you could try cayenne pepper. All right, another thing that we use is what's called the heating compress. And the way you do it, the heating compress, is if a person has pain in the abdomen, if they have regular constipation, problems with the digestive tract, what you do is you make this is a piece of wool, like this, see? And this piece of wool comes with I cut a piece of cotton out of a sheet. Fortunately, we are at the Silver Hills Guest House. We have lots of leftover sheets. After a while, they wear down. Then I get all this raw product to work with, and so I can tear them up. Here's what you do. You get a piece of cotton cloth like that, the size of the abdomen. Dip it in cold water, wring it out so it doesn't drip. Put it on the person's abdomen. Have them lay on their back on there, and you can do it for yourself. Lay on your back here, and then you take in, while they're laying on their back, you wrap this around to the front, right? right across the front like that, and pin it in place with that wet cotton cloth. That's called a heating compress. And it will increase the circulation in their abdomen while they're sleeping. For people that having insomnia, excellent for people that are having insomnia. Many people are having insomnia because it's of their digestive tract. And if one of the causes is their digestion, this is what you would use. You would put this on their stomach and then wrap this around. This is cold and wet. You lay it on the stomach, and then this, and it does the same thing as we did last night with that wet sheet pack. It brings blood to the surface of the skin, which takes it away from the digestive tract and helps them digest their food, helps them relax that digestion. Another thing that we use is castor oil. I think that's on the last page. Is that it? Yes, castor oil. Second to last page. The way you use castor oil, if we have a person that has colitis, very common problem is colitis. What you do with that is you take a piece of flannel and you fold it into 5 thicknesses. So you want a piece that you end up with is about this big. And so you fold the flannel, so you have 5 thicknesses of flannel. Then you soak it in castor oil. Make it soaking wet so that it's not dripping, but it's wet right through. Put it on where the inflammation is. Usually right here is where that colitis is going to show up. You lay that on there. Then you lay plastic over top of it, and then you put a heating pad on there, and you leave it on for 45 minutes. When you're done, you take the heating pad off, take the plastic off, take the castor oil pack now, and put it in a plastic bag and put it in the fridge. And you can use it 40 times. You can keep on using it. If it starts to get a little stiff or dry, add a little more castor oil to it. Or you can just add it any time in the process. It will work over and over again. It works really good for a person that has indigestion, especially colitis. Are you with me? Okay, let's see. And then the last thing that we have for you is dealing with digestion. And you'll see we've left you with a number of things like acidophilus, activated charcoal, aloe vera, artichoke extract, betaine, hydrochloride, bitters, and calcium magnesium. You can look at those and see if any one of them apply to your problems. The most important thing that I can tell you is, first of all, what I shared with you at the beginning. If you're eating a plant-based diet, head in that direction, number 1. Number 2 is begin to take care of your digestive tract by eating on time. All right? If you eat on time, you're going to eat less, you're going to be more satisfied, and you're going to be a lot happier person to live with. Okay? Thank you for your time. Let's have a word of prayer together. Father in heaven, as we bow before you here this afternoon, we've gone through a lot of material together. We want to thank you for the way that you've designed food, Lord. It's just when we pick it off the trees, we pick it off the vine, we eat it from the garden, it tastes so delicious. But Lord, you know where we're living right now. It's difficult for that to happen in many cases. And we just ask that you will lead each person here this afternoon as they seek to make good food, as they seek to make food that's healthful for themselves, that you will lead and guide and direct them. And Lord, that you will help us to take care of ourselves. You know, we get caught up in this busy environment that we're in. And we forget about ourselves. We forget about what you created. We forget about the needs of our body. We forget about all those things that you have made, and we get so busy doing things. But we ask you, Lord, that you will speak to our hearts, that you'll open our thinking to your direction, that you'll be with each person, each family that's represented, as our prayer in Jesus' worthy name. Amen. Sure, you want to have a Q&A? Sure. Yeah, go ahead. Anybody questions? Yes, sir. About which? Before, yeah, before you eat. 15 minutes, yeah. And you can make 30, let's see, 4 and 4 is, you can make 3 days supply of cabbage juice ahead. So you don't have to make it fresh at every meal. You can put it in the fridge. Don't make it any more than 3 days ahead. It gets really sour.
So it doesn't matter what type of food you're going to eat?
No.
You say that every time or just
You take it 3 times a day.
So
Yeah.
my question was, he did mention about the advantages of cabbage juice on digestive tract. Then I was asking, did he mention 15 minutes or 50? And he said it's 15 minutes. Now I'm asking, does it matter what type of food I will eat after the 15 minutes, whether I'm going to eat fruits or vegetables, or it doesn't matter?
No. When you take the cabbage juice 15 minutes before, it's already gone and done its job. So you're actually treating the digestive tract, not trying to not incorporate it into the meal. You're trying to treat the digestive tract. And you're trying to do it at the same time as you would normally eat. Yeah. Okay? Yes?
Is lemon juice good for your digestion?
It is, yep. You can take that. If you can, some people like to drink it with their water. It's fine. Yep. Yeah, some people may like that. I don't know. I wouldn't want to drink a lot of it, but you drink a little bit before you eat, sure.
We like having charcoal shakes, like with blueberries and stuff. But then I heard someone say that when you do that, the charcoal makes it so that you don't absorb the vitamins and minerals from the other foods. Is that true?
Oh, good question. So that I can give you this as an answer to that question. All right. We had a lady that came to us that had a colostomy, and so the colostomy is another word for it would be having a bag on your side, so that the person's bowels didn't work. They used a bag instead, right? And because of the odor that came from that, she took 10 charcoal tablets before each meal. And she'd been doing it for 10 years, no loss of vitamins or minerals or any of that type of thing. My understanding is it doesn't absorb the natural vitamins and minerals, but it will absorb your pills, any type of pills that you're taking. So if you're taking, medications, you should be waiting an hour before, a couple hours after. So you shouldn't be taking your medications in conjunction with the charcoal because it will absorb those. But as far as the natural vitamins and minerals, no, it doesn't. Okay? Yeah, and I think you can look that up and verify it too. Yeah. Okay? Any other questions at all?
So I know somebody that's on a keto diet. You've heard of that, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And they've lost a lot of weight.
Sure.
But they don't eat fruits.
Right.
I mean, I think they allow tomatoes, but whatever. There's some side effects to that, isn't there?
Sure.
With keto.
So let's talk a little bit about the keto. The keto came from ketosis, right? I mean, that's basically where the word originated. And there was a diet previous to this. Do you know what was it called? Does anybody know what it was before the keto diet? We had another diet, Atkins, okay. All right, so interestingly enough, Silver Hills Bakery, it makes sprouted wheat bread, right? And so to sprout the grain, you make voluminous bathtubs full of sprouted wheat, huge amounts. And then you grind it into a mash before you make the bread. So they had to buy a meat grinder for their grinding of the wheat to put in the bread. And the only meat grinder that they get that was big enough to do the job was a meat grinder. It's the only one from a meat, right? So they went to Chicago, where this is where the largest meat manufacturing takes place in North America, is Chicago. They went to their meat convention, and there they were looking at grinders. And they saw there was off to one side, this was years ago, there was a meeting with all these executives from the meat industry. And they unveiled a chart. And on the chart was the picture of a man. And who do you think it was? His name was Atkins. And they said, we have our man, see? Because Atkins was advocating no carbohydrate-free diets, right? Which meant you had to eat meat. The only way you could get that is not to eat meat, right? Okay. So they were advocating that. So all of a sudden, every time you opened your computer, you ran into this thing, Atkins Diet, Atkins Diet, Atkins Diet. Well, Atkins didn't have the money to promote himself to that extent. He was promoted by the meat industry, right? He was their man. They were using it. All right. So does it work? Yes, it works fabulous. So if you take and you completely cut carbohydrate out of your diet, what's the next thing in the chain for making energy? What are you going to use? What are you going to use? Fat. You're going to burn fat. It's exactly what you're going to do. You're going to burn fat. And you'll have what they call ketosis. ketone breath. You'll be breathing out ketones. You can smell it. It's because you're burning fat. You're not burning carbohydrate. Now, here's the problem. In your muscles, you have a thing called glycogen. If you see a bear, you have a type of starch in your muscles or carbohydrate in your muscles that you can just run like fury. It's sugar in your muscles. It's called glycogen. It hangs on to 30 times its weight in water. All right? So if I go off, all carbohydrates, all the glycogen is gone and all the water is gone. So I lose weight rapidly, tremendously rapidly. I lose weight just overnight because the water is gone. If I eat one slice of bread, I put on 5 pounds. I've had people tell me, I ate 3 pieces of bread, I put on weight, I put on 3 pounds. All I ate is 3 pieces of bread. How did they do that? Well, the reason why they did it is when they put back the glycogen, they put back the water. And the weight came back, and they become carbohydrate averse. They're afraid to eat carbohydrate, literally afraid to eat carbohydrate. Because if they ate carbohydrate, immediately they put on this unbelievable amount of weight. Well, it's not the carbohydrate that's putting on the weight, it's the glycogen that's hanging on to water. Does that make sense to you? That's what's happening. Now, the problem with the Atkins diet, what was the problem with it? Why did it all of a sudden go out of fashion? Why do people not want to do it anymore? Because of all the problems that high fat, high protein cause. All the problems with kidney stones, all the problems with, gallbladder stones, all the problems that high fat and high protein cause. Because really the body works on plants. That was the way it was designed. And if you take all the plants out of your diet and just eat animal products, fat and protein, you're going to end up with all kinds of health problems. And it won't show up immediately, but it comes later. The keto diet is another diet that is almost the Atkins diet in a different suit. It's just about exactly the same. Right? Yeah. He just gave up with a new name because the Atkins diet was just thrown out. We had so many health problems as a result of it. So people said, no more. So we repackaged it as a keto diet. Make sense? Okay. Yes?
When we eat fruit, we should eat before meal or after?
Some of these debates are hard because there's counsel, we've been given counsel. First of all, one of the counsels is fruits and vegetables for people with weak digestion shouldn't be combined. And it's sure enough that foods that compete with each other in the digestion shouldn't be combined. That's for people with weak digestion. So if you don't have weak digestion, you can eat it before or after. It's not going to hurt you. There isn't a rule, unvarying rule on some of these things on any of it. It's not an unvarying rule. There are certain broad rules, like eating on time, eating not too many varieties, things like that. Those are broad rules that really work best. But when it comes to how soon should you drink your water, before your meal or after your meal? Well, there's no hard, fast rule. So I tell people a little bit before and a little bit after, because there isn't a rule. So, okay.
So we talked about the digestive system and the time it takes. How much time should you wait between breakfast and lunch and dinner? Okay, so you should, the digestive process, providing it's not really complex meal, with all kinds of moving parts, and if it's fairly, let's say three different varieties, should be through in 4 hours. About 4 hours, right? So if you space your meals out 4.5 hours throughout the day, that's just beautiful. Yeah. Okay.
Any more questions? Two more. First.
I have a friend who during COVID has gone on this new thing where he breaks his fast instead of at breakfast time, but way later in the day, like 1 o'clock or something, and he swears by it, that it's just done wonders for him. Do you have any thoughts on that, if that's beneficial or not?
So he doesn't eat anything until noon?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, there's a number of, you can look up spacing of meals. You can look up the spacing of meals, and it's very controversial, right? Okay. I can give you a couple of examples. They had a school where they had students that were not performing well, not doing well, okay? So their IQ was low and they weren't doing well on their schooling. So they set up a table and they had them eat breakfast. And they had the teachers eat the breakfast with them. and their IQ went up, which is not supposed to happen, but it did. And it was just eating the breakfast. In other words, when your brain needs the energy is after you get up. Now this fellow is obviously found that it works good for him. I don't know whether he has a cup of coffee or two before he comes to work. I don't know how he actually works that out. But it's really best to produce, the larger the breakfast and lunch, the smaller the supper. And the smaller supper is when you sleep better. See, so if you eat less for supper, you're going to sleep better, you're going to have a deeper sleep, everything's going to work better. Our whole process of eating a tiny breakfast, coffee and a muffin, tiny piece of bread or so for lunch, and bulk of our calories after we get home from work, that's counterproductive for our sleep and then it means we have to store the energy and then haul it back out. Whereas if we were to eat it and digest it and use it as we were using it, that would be a lot easier. We wouldn't end up with gaining weight as much and all the rest of it. Okay?
My question is similar, the question that Linda just asked, because in Asia, it's very recent years, it's very popular that people just, they have they call 168. You eat your breakfast, you eat during the day for 8 hours, and then you stop eating at 4 p.m. So just pretty much you can eat whatever you want during the 8 hours. But for my own personal experience, I only eat 2 meals a day, because if I eat too late at night, I have hard time to sleep. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of used to this diet for over probably 20 years. And my question is, will that really, that kind of diet will affect my stomach acid or no?
What is the diet that you're saying?
Only 2 meals a day.
Sure.
And I don't really eat too much, I eventually don't eat dinner. But will that affect my stomach acid to digest during the day or no?
So you eat breakfast and lunch, no supper, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Big breakfast,
yep.
A lot of...
That's
yeah.
excellent. There's nothing wrong with that. 2 meals a day are preferable to 3. That's fine.
Okay, another question. Recently, people are very crazy about eating celery or drinking celery juice. What's the benefit of eating celery stalk or drinking celery juice?
It's alkaline.
Oh.
It produces alkalinity in the body, so the person's going to be more alkaline if they use celery. So people, especially on a meat diet, tend to be acidic, and so, if you're on more of a plant-based diet, you can be more alkaline, and celery will really help to alkalinize the system. So yeah, that's the main reason for it. Okay, good, thank you.
Quick question. How about brain fogginess after you eat?
Okay.
So you have a meal, and then maybe half an hour you're feeling pretty good, and then, oh dear, I'm getting a little sleepy.
So let me tell you something about the digestive tract. When the food is absorbed into the bloodstream, it goes to the liver. And so the food is picked up into the bloodstream and it goes to the liver, and it goes through a second set of capillary beds. And if that vessel, the blood vessel carrying the blood into the liver, is congested, that's called the portal vein. If the portal vein is congested, then you get really sleepy shortly after you eat. You feel like you just can't stay awake. That is the time to get up, move around, do the dishes, sweep the floor, go for a walk. Don't give in to the sleep, all right? The reason is because what that means is the blood has left the head and it's congested in the portal vein. And when it congests in the portal vein, if you go and lay down at that time, when you wake up, you won't be refreshed. You'll feel still groggy. You'll feel like, oh, I didn't get refreshed. What you really need is to move around. The problem with sleeping right after you eat, I'll tell you this story. I had a fellow that came, one of our first guests that came to us had a serious stroke. And so I said to his wife, I said, what did he eat just before he went to bed? And she said, nothing. And I thought to myself, that's strange, because usually with a serious stroke, he's eaten a high-fat diet and went and laid down on it. And then she came back to me a few weeks later and she said, you know what? He had 2 pieces of Philadelphia cream cheese pie. Then he went to bed. Then he had a massive stroke. See, what happens is that when the blood is moving, it doesn't tend to coagulate, get sticky. But when it slows down, when you lay down after you sleep, then the the absorption of the fat into the bloodstream, it tends to get sticky and coagulates. That's that's the very thing you don't want to have happen. So if you're getting people that are really sleepy right after they eat, usually it's their portal vein system. It's just getting slow. And you don't want to go out and do really vigorous work. You just want to go out and go for a walk, or move around the garden, or do the dishes, or do something that keeps you awake, and that'll pass. And then get some more sleep before you eat. Make sure you get your sleep before you eat if you're going to sleep. And let me tell you another thing. When we get older, grow old gracefully. Get in a chair and nap during the day. It's fine. Just not after you eat, but nap during the day. It's good. You'll live longer. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with having a nap during the day. Don't stop yourself. Just don't do it right after you eat. Okay?
Sorry. Is it okay, like, to exercise before you eat, so you'll use up the glycogen stores in your liver?
Yeah, that's fine.
After you eat, because the two compete.
Yeah. So what I
you might get cramp, stomach cramp.
Yeah, what I tell people to do is exercise when they can, because most of us have a hard time getting it in. So I just try to get them to exercise whenever they can. Yeah.
I just wanted to add on what you said about eating breakfast or just like eating it 1 p.m. What's the difference? You did mention about the blood thickness and what happens when you go to sleep. So research showed that people who did not eat breakfast and they ate later on, like 3-4 hours after they woke up, they had more risk towards getting heart attack than people who actually did eat breakfast. So they might be doing that and the body get used to it, but it's kind of being abused. It's doing something in an unusual way. There's a need of food. And that's due to the fact that most people eat lots of food before they go to bed. And when they wake up, they don't need food because they're still full.
Yeah, so I tell people, if you're having a hard time eating breakfast, quit eating supper. Yeah. If you're having a hard time eating breakfast, just quit eating supper. At 5 o'clock in the morning, you have the fridge door open looking at what's in it. Okay. All right. Good enough. Thank you for the questions. Oh, we got another question. Go ahead.
Hi. I'm just wondering if there's any truth to the diet variations according to blood types. It doesn't make sense to me. That would be too complicated. God wouldn't make our health so complex, right?
So, okay, let me explain something to you. If you took that theory, all right, if you took the theory, eat right according to your blood type, then in India, they would have to triple the amount of meat production to feed all the people that have O-type blood. And it's impossible. There isn't the land mass. So even if it made a little bit of sense, it doesn't make any sense at all because you can't feed the people the way that it's being suggested. If you want more information on that, you can Google Eat Right for your blood type, and Michael Clapper, Dr. Michael Clapper, he gives you a whole report on that. He explains all the fallacy to that type of thing. Okay? Dr. Michael Clapper. Okay, good.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Brother Phil. We thank you all for your presence. And tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, right?
10 o'clock, that's right.
Tomorrow morning,
Sinusitis and home remedies. Okay, there you go.
Thank you. God bless you.